visiting some friends last night, and the wife has a newborn, and we found that for the newborn's sake, because she was having a lot of colic, we recommended going gluten-free, and the baby's doing so much better. And just sort of as a by the way, she was like, yeah, and it was so nice. My friend was recently in San Francisco, and he brought me sourdough bread, and I'm so excited. I was like, no. She goes, wait, he said it was gluten-free, and she goes, my dad told me it was gluten-free, that I could have sourdough or Ezekiel bread, which is sprouted bread. So let's finalize this question once and for all. I don't know if it's going to be once and for all, but here we go. So the truth of the matter is that sourdough bread is not, I repeat, not gluten-free. Now, if you are somebody who does not have celiac, does not have gluten sensitivity, and you find that some wheat products, you do a little better with versus others, maybe when you're in Europe and there's no GMO and it's ancient grains, you do a bit better. Or remember, this is a non-celiac, this is somebody who's not been diagnosed with having gluten sensitivity. Because the truth of the matter is that when you are celiac or you have gluten sensitivity, this is the amount of gluten you can have. None. Because if you have any more than that, you are creating problems for yourself. Now, plenty of people who cheat and they go, I feel fine. How you feel and how your immune system is reacting are two very different things. So I have patients regularly who cheat, and then maybe we're updating a stool test, and there's different ways we look for gluten sensitivity. My favorite is a blood test. It's called a Wheat-Zoomer test. I have no affiliation with the lab, but it gives us great results. But sometimes we're updating a stool test, and there's a metric on the stool test to see if you've been eating gluten, and it's like, you've been eating gluten. And I was like, well, just a little bit, but I'm not having the XYZ symptom that I used to have when I was eating a lot of gluten. Doesn't matter. The test showed it because your immune system is registering it, which means it's creating a problem. So let's go over the statistics. For a food to be gluten-free in this country, in the US, it has to have less than 20 parts per million of the gluten protein. In Europe, it's less than 10, so they're quite a bit more restrictive there. So what does regular bread have? Make sure I got my number right. Regular bread, just good old wheat bread, has 124,000 parts per million of gluten. So you want it to have less than 20, it has 124,000. Okay, fine. Now let's look at sourdough. Sourdough has 200 parts per million. You go, wow, it's a fraction. That's like between a thousandth and almost a thousandth. So it's a little bit more than that. But so, if somebody says sourdough has a lot less gluten than regular bread, is that true? That is true. But if you're on a zero tolerance policy of gluten, it doesn't matter, because any gluten is too much gluten if you have celiac or you have gluten sensitivity. I do have patients who have a misunderstanding because they don't have celiac disease, and they're told, well, you seem to be sensitive, maybe watch it. So they try to keep gluten low. It's like being a little pregnant, you are or you're not. So when it comes to sourdough, is there less gluten? Yeah, there's a lot less gluten. Does that mean you should eat it if you're celiac or gluten sensitive? Absolutely not. Never, ever, ever. You can't eat it. There's too much gluten in there. What about Ezekiel bread that's sprouted? Same thing. It's got less gluten, but it doesn't have no gluten. So it's really important, and if you know somebody who is gluten sensitive, I wrote this book, 2009. So long ago, but we wrote the book, The Gluten Effect, when there really was no concept of gluten sensitivity other than by researchers. It was not embraced by celiac organizations. It was just kind of celiac or nothing. And my husband and I wrote that book because we were seeing so many patients who absolutely did not have celiac disease, but they were gluten sensitive. And anyway, 2009, 14 years ago. But this comes up a lot, and as I said, it was just last night, and we were over at a friend's house, and her baby had been doing so much better, and I'm like, and give that sourdough to your husband because it's going to be bad for you. So if you have questions, please let me know. If you've heard contrary evidence, I do understand. There's a lot of it out there on the internet, but the science, the actual facts of how much gluten is in sourdough bread is irrefutable, and it's not zero. So don't take the chance because it's affecting you in ways that sometimes you cannot feel, which is, I know, a little bit insidious about gluten, but I could talk about gluten for a long time. But if you're sensitive, if you wonder if you're sensitive, reach out. We've got a great test that we work with our patients that tells there's a lot of different parts of the gluten protein and how they can affect you. Some are more digestive, some are more neurological, some are more skin related, and this test does the whole complement. So anyway, I hope you found this enjoyable and informative. If so, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, please, so more people can see this, and tell your friends. I hope you found this video helpful. If you want more on this topic and others, click here.